Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Good, good. How are you doing so far?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Whew. It's kind of crazy around here with all this COVID, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Ugh. Didn't get to make our out of country trip.
I
Ugh.
was going to ask you about that. Oh, man, I know a lot of students. Well, I know a lot of students missed a lot of good training and a great experience.
Yeah, we were set to go to Romania
Yeah,
and Costa Rica,
yeah.
and neither one. And I don't know that it'll happen next year either.
I don't know either because of, you know, I don't see this going anywhere completely ever. But,
Well, it'll be like the flu. We'll have to get a vaccine and be able to control it better than we can now. But I saw where Costa Rica was going to open up to let people from the United States come back, but not from Texas.
really,
We have one of the highest rates of deaths and infections in the United States,
just
in
because we want
Texas.
to sit down.
Thank you.
We won't
it's
sit down.
because
We won't sit down.
it's because we won't behave.
That's right.
That's what it is.
We won't behave.
We won't behave. I've been working with a couple of organizations out of New York on my robot research, and in talking with them. It was probably 6 weeks ago, and they said, "Well, how are things going?" And I said, "Well, I think we're fixing to get sent back to our room because we're not behaving here." And
Yeah.
it was right before the governor shut down, the bars and things like that again.
Well, how's your robot experience going?
It has been. I've learned so much about what doesn't work. And that's good. I mean, we need to know the things about what doesn't work as much as what does work. I have one in an assisted living right now, and then I'm putting one in a nursing home next week. And so we're starting to work with them actually in those areas. But they can be pretty intimidating. People just don't quite know how to work with them. And so we're having to come up with a model for being able to get them to be comfortable in working with them and really maximizing their use. So one of the organizations that we're working with out of New York, I found them during COVID because they bought 30 of the Timmy robots and put into an assisted living facility. So we're wanting to do some data collection with them about how that's working. And they bought them. It's a pretty upscale assisted living retirement community and like in Manhattan. And so they bought them for the individual rooms. So each person has one in their individual room.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting 6 months. I can say that.
Oh, sure it has.
So how is your work and everything going?
Well, I'm at home, so.
Okay.
I'm at home. I'm one of the individuals that when I don't have anything to do outside the door, sometimes I walk to the door. Oh, it's nice outside today, and I come back in. Yes, ma'am. I come back in. I'm one of the ones that really, if they say stay safe and be at home, I'm staying safe and being at home if I don't have anything else to do.
And that's a smart thing to do. I've pretty much done that. My husband and I, he works in a plastics factory, so they're an essential factory because they have government contracts and agricultural contracts. But it's a real small company. It's privately owned, and there's only like 25 people who work there. So he's been still going to work, but I've been pretty much staying at home until this past week when students came back to campus. I don't know if that's going to work or not.
So you've been actually having some face-to-face classroom time?
What we started with and this is the perfect time to teach supervision and administration because it's no holds barred, but because in our undergraduate program, we do not have approval for a fully online program from the coordinating board or from CSWE. So when we flipped in March, when everybody flipped, we didn't have a choice, so everything went online. But then coming back, because they were going to be bringing students back, we couldn't fully justify a 100% online program. And I actually surveyed, sent out a little questionnaire to the undergraduates and said, you know, kind of like the one I sent out to y'all, you know, what do you want face to face or, and about 70% of them wanted some aspect of face to face. So what we've created is we've created in our classrooms the social distancing. So there's only, you can only, in one of the classrooms, you can only have 11 students. That's the most you can have. And so we do that. And then I did some research and purchased, it's called a Pixium robot camera, but you put like your iPad or something on it and you can put Zoom on it and it follows the instructor as they teach. So the students that are at home are seeing what's going on in the classroom through the Zoom meeting. So they're there live. And then we set it up where we took a laptop and we project the students at home on the wall. So that just like you see the pictures here, so like the instructor can see their pictures on the wall to try to bring as much closeness so that they have the option of virtual or face-to-face. That worked for the first week at the Metroplex in Frisco, and then they've all decided they only want virtual now. So we're having live classes at the day and time scheduled with the virtual meeting option. And that's how we're getting by it not being a fully online program.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been a
try and error.
Creative summer. I think since students have been back, we're already up to like almost 100 cases online. You got somebody looking over your shoulder.
Yes, sir. That's my daughter. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I do the same thing to her when she's in class during the daytime.
Pop in there.
Yes, ma'am. Make sure she's doing her work.
How's she doing with that?
She's doing okay. She had her choice. If the school was open, she would want to go to school.
Sure.
But I'm trying to keep her as safe as possible and but for the most part, you know, when the end of the school year ended last year and, you know, they went virtually after spring break, it was really difficult. It was an adjustment for the both of us. But now, you know, because she did it then, you know, the adjustment is she's well adjusted. Not to say she likes it, but she's well adjusted. So she jumps on every morning. She keeps, you know, her time when this class starts, this one ends. And so right now things are going well.
Good. It is an adjustment. It just takes it does take a little while to get a system worked out so that you can get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Oh. We'll wait a few more minutes and see who else is going to hop on here. There's about 6 that I got emails from that I guess have a conflict because they have another class, but as soon as they get through with it, they're going to hop on here if we're still on. And I just don't, the other part when we talk about organizations and agencies, you know, and that's what, I mean, we're an educational organization, but the other thing in social work that we're really trying to master is the connection. And because, you know, it's not going to work just to asynchronously, you know, just get on there, do things at your own pace and things like that. That's not learning that human connection. And so we're trying to come up with ways to provide that connection, not lose that, not penalize students, still giving the flexibility for the online component, but still looking at that engagement. So I don't know if you noticed, but our syllabus changed. We don't have an attendance policy. We're looking at an engagement policy. And what that looks like is very different from class to class.
It does.
Yeah, it looks very different. So we have some flexibility in that, but we're actually going to be doing an evaluation process over this next year to look at what works best, you know, what we need to chunk, what the challenges are, so that we can really promote that engagement and develop that component, because that's what we have to be. That's why we chose to be social workers, was for that engagement, that human to human engagement. It wasn't to just write papers and do things online. And so that's been challenging too.
Yes, ma'am, it is. It's very challenging.
Hopefully we'll get it figured out.
I believe the agency will. I believe we will.
Yeah. We just got to keep trying. Jasmine, can you hear me? She's muted.
Yeah, it looks like she's muted.
Who's Trini's phone? I don't know who Trini's phone is.
I saw her. She was there earlier.
I'm Maria Hernandez.
Okay. Hey, Maria, how are you?
Maria.
I saw your picture there for a minute.
Hi, Dr. Judd.
Oh yeah, I'm actually gonna take my daughter to her soccer practice right now. So.
Okay. Hey, Jasmine, how are you?
I'm good.
But I'll stay on.
Okay. We're going to give a few more minutes and let see who else will show up, and then we'll talk about class and figure out. Here comes Tammy. Hey, Tammy. How are you doing, Tammy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm okay. Trying to figure out all this online stuff. How's your life progressing in the online world?
It is progressing. I've learned a lot, to say the least.
I never knew I would become such a tech geek, but
I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to get there.
we're going to wait just a few more minutes and see who else can hop on. Some are going to be hopping on late because they're in another class right now. Dr. Moore got to this time before I did, apparently, and got it locked up, but I don't think she meets a long time. So if we're still here, I told them just to hop in and we can talk when they come in. What I want to do is just offer this opportunity, is do this every other week, you know, so that's why it's not too overwhelming to meet every week, but at least meet every other week in a face-to-face and have some conversation to, you know, clarify issues or discuss something that may be controversial. You guys can obviously read the book. You can read resources I provide you. You can engage in some online chats and things like that. But I want us to have the opportunity to really be able to talk and discuss. This is actually one of my favorite classes to teach, but I really like to teach it in the face-to-face venue because I like to drill down into some of those areas that traditionally aren't addressed in the book. You know, the challenging conversations, how to fire somebody. You know, typically if you have to fire somebody or let them go, it's because you haven't done your job as a manager, period. You know, but looking at those things. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to be able to engage in some of those. Hey, how are you, Kennedy?
I'm good. How are you? I was really talking.
Sorry.
Well, let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and get started. And I want to
I cannot hear you, Professor.
You can't hear me?
Uh-huh.
You just answered me.
Can't hear.
Can everybody else hear me? Everybody else can hear me, Kenny.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Check some of your settings there on your computer. Okay. So let me just kind of go ahead and give you an overview of what we're going to do this semester in the class, like we would if we first day that we met. You've already seen the information about the interview of somebody who's a leader or who has started their own organization. We're really wanting you to be able to drill down with somebody who's been through the process of like starting an organization or running a nonprofit. We're in the process of developing this course, this 508, along with 507, 597, social work in the law, and then we're going to be introducing a fourth course hopefully next summer. And when students take the 3 required courses, because they're already required, and you add that fourth one, then you would be eligible to get a certificate in the business of social work. We know a lot of our students have or go on to start their own agencies, even their private practices down the road, or they go on to be a leader in an agency, either from a management or administrative perspective. So we want to offer that nuts and bolts about what that's like, human resources, budgeting, the intricate details of how to file for a nonprofit, that type of thing. So we're kind of revamping this course this semester. Among all the other changes, we opted to do that too. But that's why we want you to this semester engage in some type of interview with somebody who's in a leadership type position, a high level position, and can really give you some insight into what it's like to operate a nonprofit, whether they've started it themselves or whether they're managing it for somebody else. We've kept the grant assignment in here. That is a really, really good experience for everyone. Generally, you do it in a group. I think we have 19 people in here. If you know somebody, what I'll do is I'll set up a way for you to let me know if you want to work with somebody on the grant assignment. But go ahead and start looking at grant opportunities, requests for proposals, RFPs. These can be things, and we've had a lot of students that's actually had their grants funded. We've had students who've gone through Lowe's and wrote the grant and was able to provide a playground in an area that didn't have a playground. It was economically lower income, and so they were able to get the grant and provide playground equipment. We've had several that have been funded, so we want you to actually go through that process as it is very real, to do the grant and to hopefully submit it. Not all of them are open during this time. Some of them have open times and some of them don't. But when you look at that, you can see when you might be able to submit it, but we want you to do that. That's a really good skill that you can have and take with you and put on your resume when you go through that, when you leave here. So the leadership, the grant, then we're going to start you at putting together and thinking through a business plan to start a nonprofit. And we've outlined some of those components that we want you to be able to develop in this business plan. Several of you are ready to graduate this semester, aren't you? Some of you are ready to, so that's good. You're going to kind of get left hanging. The idea behind the business plan will be for students to be able to build it over more than one semester, in the different classes, but you'll at least get that exposure to, again, some of the nuts and bolts about what it's like to build a business plan for an organization, for an agency. The social media activity. That was one that we want you to, if you already have a LinkedIn, you can spice it up, or you can create a LinkedIn, create a Instagram account. We want you to create a professional social media presence. And we'll be providing some resources to look at that. I actually purchased a book. I'll have to look it up and the name of it, and I'll give you the name of it, but it's actually how to create a LinkedIn account and the really good components to be able to put yourself out there and use it as a marketing tool. So we want you to go through that process of creating a very professional social media presence, because that's also very important now, especially for the nonprofit sector, is being able to do that and manage that in a very positive way. So it was that, it was the grant, it was the interview, the social media presence, and the business plan. So those were the main components that we want you to go through this semester. What I want to do is I've already given you one article to read that looks at the concept of management and administration in organizations from a broader perspective. So we're going to talk about the broader perspective these first couple of weeks, and then we're going to start drilling down into some of those very practical skill areas. And what you need to think about as a leader or as a manager, as an administrator. And maybe engage in some role plays. We can do some of that. I want it to be as interactive as we can while we're sitting in front of the computer screen. The reality is as you guys have been working in this new environment now through your field practicums, if not through your employment, I don't know that we're ever going to go back to the way we were, where we'll be 100% the way we were. I think technology has invaded, and there's a lot of positives for it that's come out of the situation we're in with the COVID and the economy and things like that. So I think there's a place for that. But as you're moving into those administrative manager positions, we really have to have those discussions about what that looks like from a technology standpoint. I know from my standpoint as being the director in the School of Social Work, I really have to struggle with how each faculty member communicates, the best way to communicate, and when to use electronic communication and when not to. And I'm still struggling with that. So, you know, some other decisions that have to be made and have had to be made has to do with who comes to campus to teach. You know, who's not comfortable coming to campus to teach. If we have classes on campus and nobody wants to come to teach, what do we do about that? These are all things that we've had to grapple with all summer and on into the semester. And these are things that as a leader, as an administrator of an agency, you would have to grapple with for your workers, those individuals who are providing services. There's no real policies out there to govern such a situation that we're in. Does anybody want to share anything about what you've experienced in this environment?
I have a tiny thing to share.
Do what?
I have a tiny thing to share.
Tiny thing to share? Okay.
Yeah.
I know we have to limit Teeny because she talks too much. So share a tiny thing.
Yeah, so in where I was working as in Turning Point as an intern, the employees out there had more choices, but interns didn't have any choice. They had to come and give input or see clients irrespective of whether they want it or not. Like, we did not have a choice. They believed in the traditional way of counseling where it is face to face, because our supervisor believed like in the human connection front, so we had to go to the building.
Okay. So in your role as an intern, you weren't given a choice.
No.
But in the role as the employees, they were given a choice.
More freedom.
More freedom. Okay. Okay. And that's it. That's an interesting perspective. And again, the that connection. I mean, that's what social work. That's what counseling. That's what those human service organizations and that's what we're built on. We're built on that human connection. But how do we do that and still keep people safe? And I don't know. We're struggling with it. We're struggling with it on that part. So it's interesting that they didn't allow the interns the freedom to do that. So basically, an intern would have to make a choice between not coming.
Yes. Either you don't come because you're not competent enough. You can't even manage 1 day or 2 days of internship, or you come and you do those hours for your own benefit.
You have to make a choice. So you had a little bit of a taste of what some of the frontline workers are having to are having to experience. I saw a really good, it was the news, and I don't remember if it was CBS or NBC or something like that. I actually watched it on Amazon Prime, but it was a very good presentation for the Latinx community and how, as being frontline workers, how they've been greatly impacted by the COVID. Not only because much of what they do, they can't do it remotely. You know, they're the people who are out there who are stocking the shelves, who are picking the fruits and the vegetables, who are working in the restaurants, working in the hotels, who are working in the cleanup. And plus then they're disproportionately affected by the illness. And so they get a double hit. As future leaders, as future social work administrators, those are all things that you'll have to grapple with and try to figure out a way to do it. So there has to be some overarching culture, some overarching guidance about it. And right now there's really not. There's really not out there. We don't know. Many times policy is made through the legal system. You know, I know there's been some teachers unions who have filed lawsuits about not going back into the classroom. So sometimes that's how policy tends to be made too. But in this first part, we want to talk about the organization as a whole. The book, the textbook, I'll just be honest with y'all, and y'all know me pretty well. I don't like the textbook. It's extremely outdated. It's old as the hills. And when I started teaching this class 2 years ago for the first time, I was appalled, and I thought, why do we have this old textbook in here? Oh my gosh, it's got all the old theories and things like that. There is not a better textbook out there. There's not a newer one written out there. We looked and there's not. So it does provide you with some core ideas and some theoretical frameworks, but it doesn't provide you with the contemporary work environment that we're in now. So I'm going to provide you with some supplemental readings as we go along, just to be able to stimulate some thoughts and conversations about that. I was reading your discussions this afternoon, and I know several of you touched on the concept of the social entrepreneurship. So tell me what is the difference? What do you perceive as the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit organization? What's the difference? Just throw out some words.
Funding.
Funding how?
Funding as far as for nonprofits, everything they do needs to be documented so that they can prove that this is what I'm using your money for, this money for, in order to.
So maybe some accountability, extra accountability for
Right.
the funding. There's got to be
Right.
some documentation there.
Mhm.
Okay. What else do you see as differences or similarities?
Well, nonprofits are governed by a board, is that correct?
Nonprofits are governed by boards, board of directors. They should be. And if you file for a 501(c), then you do have to have a board of directors.
Right.
So nonprofits should be governed by a board of directors, but many for-profits are too, are governed by board of directors. It depends on how the organization is set up. If you're a nonprofit, though, you do have to have that. So you got to consider who you want on your board of directors, because they may have the ultimate responsibility for the operation of your organization. What if I told you the main difference, the only difference between the nonprofits is if you're for profit, you make money to put in your shareholders' pockets. If you're not for profit, you make money to reinvest in the organization. Have you ever thought about a not-for-profit making profit? How are you going to grow your agency if you don't make more money than you spend, if you don't earn more money than you spend, or if you don't receive or apply for more money than you spend? How would you ever grow your agency? You couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
You couldn't. So when you're a not-for-profit, what happens with the money that you write grants for, the money that you bring in fees, the money that you bring in donations, is exactly what Kennedy said. It's usually targeted for very specific lines, and it needs to be used at that. But if you want to grow your organization so that you can serve more people, you actually have to grow that income. If for-profit wants to grow their organization, they have to grow that income. They just invest it differently than a non-for-profit. And if you think about that, it's kind of like, it's similar to what the article that I gave you. In not-for-profit, we can learn a whole lot of positive things of looking at the for-profit sector. What do they do that runs businesses efficiently, effectively, gets services out? What are the characteristics of that we can bring over and apply to our nonprofit sector? That's part of what is happening right now is in the culture that we're in, really before COVID. I don't know what culture we're in now, but right before COVID, that was some of the things that this social entrepreneurship concept and some of that is really looking at. How can we maximize? We can't ignore or be against a for-profit because they have a lot of characteristics that would really benefit our not-for-profit. So the line between those is blurring a little bit more, with the exception of how those funds are used and the accountability for those funds and what that looks like in an organization where that money goes. So think about that as you're progressing.
Professor, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, the question is, okay, I know that when you're doing a nonprofit, you go in and you do grant writing and you seek to get grants from individuals to help fund your nonprofit organization. And like Kennedy was saying, you have to list and keep an accurate account of what you're doing with the funds. But then, like when you mention how the only way to grow your business is, to increase your profit. So my question on that note is, where if you submit a grant writing to receive one grant from one contribution, and you illustrate what you're using that money for, and then can you basically submit another grant to someone else illustrating the same, what the same monies will be used for, or can you only get like one grant at a time?
No, you can get multiple grants, and a lot of agencies, especially larger agencies, will have multiple grants. They'll have multiple streams of funding. So let's say you're wanting to start a not-for-profit. We had a student in the program a couple years ago, and she started a nonprofit about 10 years ago, and they mentor young girls, and then young girls, when they get ready to go to college, they are eligible for a scholarship. And I forgot how much she said she had given away, but she, talked about this. So she can actually increase the amount of money she has for scholarships by seeking multiple funding sources. Okay, so she can go through some that may be state, some that are private foundations, some that are private individuals. For the most part, one of the things that we do in social work, and we're very geared to, is obviously the populations we help are vulnerable populations. And so for the most part, our populations don't contribute financially to the services they receive. But in some instances, there are some services where the individuals may contribute and may be able to contribute a portion or a part of what it is. So that can also be a stream of income in some situations. Not all, but in some. So you can seek multiple lines of funding to grow your business, to expand your business. So when you get those additional lines of funding, what you're doing is you're reinvesting that into your organization to grow your organization. If I have a product and I'm a for-profit, if I have a product and I receive capital funding. You know, I have capital investments who come in, and that's a lot of large corporations have that. People provide capital. That's all they do is they provide loans, capital investments at a low percentage rate to be a part of the company. So as that company grows, that gets paid back, but that excess money then goes back into the individuals who invested in it. So it's a different concept for the not-for-profit and for-profit. But in the not-for-profit, what we're saying in current times, contemporary times, is we need to think more like for-profit companies. How we can be more efficient, how we can be more effective, how we can maximize, how we can bring in other people, how we can bring in other funding sources. Because the traditional way of a state organization or some organization just sitting there with your hand out and waiting for money to come, it just doesn't work anymore. Other questions or comments about that?
I have something to say.
Okay.
So we did a project in Miss Dawn's class, I think in BSW, and she said to reach out to a nonprofit and find out what they do. And I found not an assisted living community. It was a Jew community, and it was the whole life's income. They invest in the community, all the people who live there, and they have a very good lifestyle. But it functions on the money from the families who are investing in that community.
Yeah. And that's what, when we look at some of our long-term care settings and our retirement settings and some of that, many of those are for-profit. Oh, I guess Dr. Moore's class is over because here comes Rebecca. Yeah, and many of those are for-profit. So, hey, Rebecca, so you made it. So yeah, it's just a different way of thinking. I want to challenge y'all all semester long to think differently. Don't think traditionally in how we administer not-for-profits. We've got to get creative. We've got to get outside of the box so that we can serve the individuals we need to serve, and that we can elevate their status so then we don't have to serve them anymore. We want to put ourselves out of business. There's a really good study that was done. It's by the Harvard Project. It's called the Oxygen Project. And they looked at Google. It's probably 10 years old now, close to 10 years old. But they looked at Google and what the management, the benefits, the best characteristics of management and things like that were at Google. And it made me think about that, because one of the things we'll talk about and we'll drill down is we're going to talk about hiring and how to hire people and how to fire people. Both of those, as a manager, you have to be able to do, and you have to be able to do it with love and compassion and with a strategic plan in mind. And so we'll talk about those things. But then when I thought about it, I thought, tell me about, and again, you can just throw some words out, but when you think about a person who's going to be hired by Google or by one of the online, Apple, one of the tech companies, when you think about somebody who's going to be hired there, think about what characteristics come to your mind. Imagine what that person would be like. Then think about a person that's going to be hired by the Salvation Army. What are characteristics you think about that? Tell me if you're thinking about somebody who's going to apply and go and be hired by Google or one of the big tech companies, Disney or any of those companies, what are characteristics you think that person would have or should have?
Extremely creative.
Extremely creative. What else?
Obviously very tech savvy.
Tech savvy. Creative, tech savvy.
Something that would come to my mind would be like the customer service part of it.
Okay. Customer service oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else come to mind?
Fast paced.
Okay, fast paced. Flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Fast paced, flexible. Collaborative. I think of collaborative because they work in groups. Okay, so now somebody who's going to be hired by the Salvation Army, which is a service oriented organization, what would be some characteristics you would think?
Patience.
Patience?
Compassion.
What huh? For
Compassion.
Lisa? Compassion?
Empathy.
Empathy? What else?
Communication.
Communication skills? Why would you not need somebody who's highly creative?
I would say you do need somebody that's highly creative because you have
Would
to
you
be-
need somebody that can work in a fast-paced environment?
You do.
You do, don't you? Would you need somebody who's tech savvy?
Yes.
In the contemporary environment, we're going to have to be tech savvy, and not just tech savvy where we're consumers of it, but we're going to have to problem solve, especially if you're in administration and leadership. You're going to have to problem solve through some technological challenges, how to make those work the best. So I think it's interesting when we think about the two different environments, we think about two very different people. But the characteristics that you described for both, if you rolled that into one person, that is going to be the ideal person for either environment. Because I think what happens when we talk about not-for-profits is we tend to be rule followers, we tend to be agency people, we tend to be the term I like to use is we become agency social workers instead of social workers who are there to change and grow the agencies. And that's what you guys learn that's what you learn throughout your program, advocacy, change agents and all that. But we get to be this rule follower and we lose that creativity because in higher education, we kill creativity, and throughout our whole school, we kill creativity. I'm just convinced of that. But we need, those are skills we need. We need to be good leaders in this not-for-profit. How many of y'all read or listen to Brene Brown?
I do.
Highly, highly, highly recommend her books, Daring Leadership, and all of those. Highly recommend those. She has a podcast now. It's really good. She's delving into a lot of the issues we're facing now, and she does a good job of that. So as leaders, we need to constantly be looking for that mentoring, that coaching, and it may not be in person. I look at Brene Brown as one of my big mentors. I just consume everything she puts out there because I think she's got such a evidence base behind her, and she's got such a history in it and does a really good job with it. So when you think about that, when you're thinking about, and if you haven't already interviewed your leader or your person you're going to interview, think of some of these things and ask some out of the box questions and see what their take is on it. And if there's somebody who is really creative and really looking to advance things and change things, or if they're kind of the person that you envision in that role where they're pretty much a rule follower, stick to the rules, the policy, that type of thing. The other thing we'll talk about as we go through, we'll follow the topics according to the chapters in the book, but I don't necessarily adhere to everything that's in the book. The topics I do, but again, there's different ways to think about those in our modern society. And one of the things when you think about task orientation and when you think about work, and I think one thing that we've been faced with in the COVID, and I love that we have been, because in social work, I think and in nonprofit social work, we get away from this, but we're so geared on putting in 8 hours, showing up to work at 8 o'clock, clocking in, clocking out at 5 o'clock. And in that time, now some of those days, we have those days where it's like back to back, we don't get a lunch and it's busy and things like that. But a lot of times in that time, there's a lot of downtime, there's a lot of, socialization time, and that's okay. But I've always wanted to be able to provide feedback, merit, reward, opportunity based on productivity, as opposed to the hours that you clock in and you clock out. And I've actually been able to delve into that just a little bit with COVID because Vicki and Janice and Wendy, they've been working remotely. They haven't been in the office all summer. And going back, it's set up where just one of them is there. So one works 2 days a week, the next one works in the middle of the week, and then the last one works 2 days a week, and then they still work remote. And I told them from the beginning, it's not about clocking in and clocking out. If you can get what you need to get done in the first 3 to 4 hours of the day, just be sure and answer your phone. But other than that, you're good to go. You don't have to put in 8 hours if you can get your work done in 4 or 5. So for me, it's about productivity. What are deliverables? What do you need to deliver? If you're in an agency, it may be you need to provide this many hours of intervention or this many hours of case management during this period of time. And you can be creative in how you provide that to meet your client's needs. But again, it's a different way of thinking about administration. And we've been forced into it with the COVID and the remote. So as we move forward, it may look very differently in terms of I get paid for my 8 hours. That's the thing. I want to get paid for my 8 hours instead of I want to pay you for the productivity that you provide to my organization. Again, taking that from a for-profit sector and bringing it into a not-for-profit sector. Just think of how much more efficient we could make things, how much more effective we could make things if we weren't so locked into this tradition of the hour. We get locked in that tradition of the hours that we put in. So that's when we'll deal down into that. The other thing that has come about that I think social work has really lacked in, and we're faced with it now, and from the nonprofit sector that the administration has to do with accessibility to technology. And accessibility, it certainly means individuals who have physical, cognitive things, accessible problems to being able to access it, whether it be vision, whether it be hearing, whether it be some physical dexterity or something like that. But something that social work has not delved into, if you look at the literature, you'll find we have not delved into it, is social justice and accessibility and access to internet and broadband and, computers. And now what are we faced with? We're having this great inequity in education because lower socioeconomic rural areas these kids don't have access to the tools that they need to be successful in online education. We should have addressed that years ago. The other countries, when we travel to other countries, those who've gone to Costa Rica and when we've gone to Romania, they view it as a right. They view access to technology and to the internet as a human right. And here in a capitalistic society, we charge for broadband. If you want more broadband, you have to pay more, and we don't put it in the rural areas, and we don't put it in lower socioeconomic areas. So those are things too that we have to think about as we're moving into this administration supervision sector. We'll talk about those. Other comments or thoughts?
I did have a question about when you do go to interview, what are some creative questions to ask if that is what you're trying to get more knowledge about, right?
If I were going to interview somebody and I'd be looking at something creatively, I would want to ask them about what action you might have to reword this, but something about if they could describe an action or an activity that they undertook that broke some rules. And whether it be policy or whether it be cultural rules or expectations, but broke some rules, and what was the outcome of that? Have you ever stepped outside of the box to do something that's just not sanctioned by your board of directors? And did that work, or how did that work? Or did it not work? I'll have to think about that. If I think about that, I'll shoot you some in terms of just questions to do that, but to really find out about that creative side of individuals. And you do see it in some areas, and you can pick it up in some news stories and things like that when they're really thinking outside of the box. But you could even couch it in terms of what's happening today with COVID-19, with remote, with the fear of that. How are you doing things differently? How did you begin to look to do things differently? How do you see this changing the way you're going to do things in the future, even after we have a vaccine and way down, and see if they're kind of stuck in their regimen, their normal policies and procedures, or if they're really taking this opportunity to look at how they can change for the future.
Okay.
So that
Dr.
would be
Judd, at my last company, a lot of our questions were very creative, but a lot of them started with, tell me about a time that what did that look at? So a lot of our questions, we had prefabricated questions, but they were always, tell me about a time or tell me about a situation. And those are really good questions.
Yeah. So tell me about, and again, you could couch it into what's happening now. It's like, tell me about something that you did that was dramatically different to rise to the challenges that we're having right now. And how did that work out for you? And then you could, based on what they say, you could have a leading question, and you could say, how do you see that moving into the future? Do you see you taking new challenges or new chances in the future because of what we've gone through right now? That part. So think about that like that. Other thoughts or questions?
I do have 2 questions, actually. So I did my interview on Saturday, and I want to just get clarification. So she opened her private practice. So it is, I keep reading on the directions on most of it, nonprofit. Hers is for profit. So I needed to make sure that was okay. She actually is a former student of TAMUC, and she's went on to got her LCSW. She actually has her own private practice, and she's a director, program director at Nexus. However, she wanted to concentrate on her private practice.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's okay, because again, we come from the mindset that we're always going to be in some form of a nonprofit, that we're always going to be in those areas, but we may not be. And again, when we look at the private practices or we look at social entrepreneurship, one thing that I think we have to do as social workers, and this is really challenging, and we have to do this from a political perspective, we have to demonstrate the value we provide to this society and the value we provide to individuals. And oftentimes we need to demonstrate that in terms of monetary terms, because there's no reason we should not be paid for the value we're providing. I mean, that's what we do. We carry this stigma almost, or we carry this mindset that I'm providing the services to individuals who have lower socioeconomic status. We typically work with individuals who are not seen by society as, the upper crust or whatever. But, the value we provide for those individuals that transform into society in terms of reducing costs in criminal justice systems, in terms of helping individuals get jobs through education, improving healthcare, all of that has benefits to society. And there is no reason why we should not say, you know what, we deserve to earn a good living because we're providing value. All money is it's just a transition. I actually earn money from the Texas A&M Commerce University because of the value that I provide to that university. And then in turn, I give that money to individuals who provide value to me. So it's this transition thing, but we have this really weird concept around money. So why should we not think about it in that way? And it's not to put it on the backs of the individuals who we're helping or who, through social injustice, cannot afford to do it. But society as a whole should do that. I think the teachers, I think the spotlight's on the educators over what's happened over this remote learning and everything that they've gone through, Because what I'm amazed at is what we're still ignoring in our society is our educational system is not just an educational system. They provide social services, they provide mental health services, they provide nutritional services, they provide healthcare services. And when students are out of the school system, then there's a lot of students at risk, but we haven't caught on to that yet. To dump, we bailed out American Airlines, we bailed out United, we bailed them out with billions of dollars, right? But now we're still wringing our hands with not having enough equipment for schools to be able to carry on. So those are things that I think that we really, to me, that's where advocacy comes in. So when you say she has a for-profit, why is that a bad thing? Why do we whisper that? It's for-profit. Really. Because we're providing value. We're providing value in society, and we need to let people know that that's what we're doing, and then we need to actually be able to earn a living to provide that value. Doesn't mean we have to be martyrs.
I had one more question. So I did. It was a Zoom call, and I did record it, of course, with permission. Where do you want those uploaded? You said that we.
Let me create a space for it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let me create a space.
Okay.
I'll go in and create a space so that we can have those, because I think that would be great to be able to experience that with you. And then we would be able to, we'd be able to say, oh, you should have asked this, or I love that question you asked, or something like that. So I'm in the process of winding up a major report that I have to do, and I'll have it wound up tomorrow. So I'll get into the classroom and provide a space for that. And I'll also drop a discussion question in there, or a discussion topic for this week, based on something we talked about tonight. I'm still struggling. We talked a little bit about, before some of you came on, this engagement thing. And what we're struggling with right now in the School of Social Work is moving to an online platform, because for our MSW program now, we can offer the whole program online. All of our approvals are there. But we're still working in an industry where human engagement is important. But we still have to provide flexibility, because when you're online, you're looking for that flexibility. So I'm still struggling with what truly engagement looks like. I want to have the live meetings at least every other week. I enjoy seeing everybody, having the conversations. I think that's just important, and I think it's important for us as we're becoming social workers. I haven't really drilled down what I'm going to look at in terms of. I hate the traditional post and then post to two peers. I would much rather it be more of a spontaneous thing. For you to just go online and say, oh, that's interesting, let me talk about that. Otherwise, it really doesn't have the meaning that it should have. You're checking the box on that part. So I'm just going to look at some different opportunities for us to engage together that'll be flexible throughout the semester, and kind of just play around with that and develop that. Okay? Is that fair?
Yes, it is. I had a question.
Okay.
I was reading that book, and I was wondering that for the interview, would you suggest or recommend going through those chapters and finding out key points that caught your attention, and you can know? Okay, that was, I was about to do that.
I mean, if it spurs some thoughts, but
okay.
Yeah. What I'd like for you to do is just really go into this with, what do I want to learn? Think about, I'm going to be a master's level social worker, and I might want to start my own nonprofit, or I might want to run an agency. What do I really want to know?
Okay, I see.
That's what I would like. Not necessarily just what's in the book, but what do I really want to know? Some of it may be, let me let Rashana in. Some of it may be, pretty much, a theory or something like that. But I just rather sit across from somebody and say, oh my gosh, tell me about your journey, how you got here. Tell me about, what were your failures? Y'all know my take on the 5 epic failures. What were your failures, and how did you learn from those? juicy details, I guess, of it. You know, what would you really want to know if you're asking somebody? That's what I want you to do.
Okay.
Okay. I was going to say something to you, and now I forgot what it was.
It's my fault.
No, forgot what it was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll think about it. Somebody, y'all tell me, what do you want to get out of this class? What do you want to leave here with?
I want to learn more about the intricacies of how nonprofits work, because I feel that they have so much to offer, but they fall behind as compared to for-profit. You know, like what is going on in nonprofit organizations? Is there like what is going on that they're not able to flourish and thrive and live up to that level of standard as for profits? That is that's very disturbing to me.
Okay, we can chat about that. Jasmine. Tell me, what do you want to get out of the class? Besides just get through it. I know everybody just wants to get through it.
I actually want to interview my boss, who is the administrator of a nursing home.
Okay. What do you want to learn from them?
I want to know why he got into that, because he's actually an RN and he was a DON. So I want to know, why did he want to switch over to the administrative side?
Okay. All right. That's fair. Somebody else want to share what they want to get out of the class? I want to make sure that y'all get what you want out of the class, and I will do extra work if I need to.
I think for me, I would like to know the pros and cons of doing your own route of a private practice versus going to work for someone else. Because I know there are a lot of intricate details and everything that come with a private practice. So is it worth it, or is it worth it to work for someone but still not have as much creative control and freedom? So
okay, all right. I bet I can tackle somebody and bring them into a meeting one day who could probably tell you that and explain their take on what that would be. Because obviously you're going to give up certain things with both of them. And so what would be the choice? Okay. Do that.
As for myself, I would like to get from this basically, I would say how to get a practice off the ground. You know, to me, whenever someone else they already have their practice established and you're trying to get yours established, it's like they're afraid to give you information how to establish your practice, because maybe you may run underneath them, or you may get far more ahead of what they are, or you may pull them down, or they may not get as far advanced as you are. So mine is, I would like to know, how do you get your own practice off the ground?
Okay. How do you get your own practice? And I think it's interesting what you said, because it's a perspective that we come from, and different leaders talk about it. But when we come from that perspective of scarcity, and that there's only one pie, and if I take a large slice of the pie, or if you take a large slice of the pie, there's not enough left for me. So I'm not going to share with you what I've done that's been successful. But if we come from the standpoint that, you know what, there's enough pie for everybody, I'm sorry, but there is enough human distress that we will all have a job. I hope someday we don't, but in our lifetime, there's enough human distress. We are all going to have a job. And just think how we could actually rock it out and elevate the level of what we do and the value we provide if we were willing to share that. You know, instead of coming from that standpoint of, oh, I'm not going to tell her what I did because I don't. No, it's like, absolutely. this is where I messed up. I think it's Tony Robbins. I listened to Tony Robbins some. He's a good speaker. He's one that I've heard this, you know, when you start whatever business you're starting, you want to start on the shoulders of somebody else. You don't want to start down where they started. You need to be able to start on the shoulders of somebody else. And we need to lift each other up to do that. So I think it's interesting that is a perspective many people have. And I'm not going to share that. I'm not going to do that. But why wouldn't we? Because then that value, it just flourishes everywhere. So let's see what we can do. We'll get you some information. Anything else? Ms. Hernandez, were you speaking? Her little thing lit up.
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Speaking, but actually do have a question that came to mind. Is I would like to learn more about how to manage and I guess the administrative part of working with minors.
Okay. All right. I'm making a note of that because that does introduce a lot of additional challenges in terms of regulations, policies, when somebody's not the age of majority. So, okay, I've got a note of that and we'll see how we can work that in. So what I will do is I do have to go through and I still have to go through and clean up the D2L shell a little bit. I do have some pre-recorded lectures, but I want to clean those up and put those on there because you can always listen to those whenever. About the weekly topics, and I'll get those on there. And every Wednesday morning, I'm going to be online in a chat. And I created this kind of by accident because I didn't realize on both of my classes I put that I would have office hours at the same time. Because I thought, oh, damn it, what am I going to do now? But no, it actually works really well. So it's a concept just like if we have office hours and we're all on campus and during my office hours, anybody could stop by and ask questions or whatever. So on Wednesday mornings, I will be live in both sections. If you go on to the D2L and you go onto the home page, it'll say live chat. You can click it and we'll use the
What time?
UCU. I have it set from 7 to 9.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay,
those will be
that's
like
good
my
time.
online hours on
Okay.
Wednesday mornings. And so if you just need to pop in and ask a question or clarify or something like that, you can do that. I'll have them up and they'll be on, and I can be working on other things while they're there till somebody comes in. But I want to try that to see to mimic what it would be like if I was in my office during that time and you just popped in. Okay. So that I'll be available during those times. If I'm not going to be available because I have a conflict, I will let y'all know.
Thank you for creating that time.
Yes,
Do
I'm a
what?
morning person. Yes.
Thank you for creating that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I did it this past Wednesday, just purely by accident, and it seemed to work okay. So that's what I'll do. So I'm going to have both of my classes open, and I can have both of them side by side. And as students come in, I can address whatever needs to be addressed, answer questions, and you can just pop in and pop out.
I have just one last one question. So I'm going back to the nonprofit thing, and I really think about it a lot. I'm very frustrated that the organizations which are for profit, they are for people who can afford that requirement or need. But I feel that nonprofits, those people are more needy for those services, and the percentage I have not looked into maybe is higher for nonprofit client list. So it's very frustrating that why is it so difficult to get a grant or get the money required to serve these kind of that population. I was just
it goes back to the concept of the populations that we serve are populations that typically are not high ranking according to societal standards. Okay. And so we have to change that. We have to change that perspective again about the value that we provide and the value these individuals provide when they receive services that elevate their position, whatever that is. So it's a way we have to change the way we think about it. And the social entrepreneurship is really one way that's kind of changing. I'm not sure where that's at now with the pandemic and everything, but the social entrepreneurship and the crowdsourcing, where you can do some of the crowdsource funding now for some different, things like that. The other thing, there was a discussion question, and it was actually in there by accident, but I'm glad it was in there, and it had to do with the research question. That was really from my research class, but anyway. It is actually very relevant because the individuals who provide money, those are individuals they're your CPAs, they're your accountants, they want a return on their investment. And that's what we have to, when we talk to them, that's how we have to talk to them. So we have to say, if you invest in our clients and if you invest in our organization, this is the return on that investment. And we have to put it in monetary terms because that's what they understand. When I worked at the hospital for years, I was the case manager for the inpatient physical rehabilitation setting. And we were a nonprofit at that time. And so we would get individuals who would come in who would not have health insurance, okay? And the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and I, we became very respectful of each other because an example would be there would be somebody in the emergency room who could benefit from inpatient physical rehab, but they had no funding source. So he would ask me, what can you do here? And I would say, you give me 2 weeks with this individual, let them come into the rehab for 2 weeks. We will get them hooked up on services. We'll get their disability started. We'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. So that way, if they return to the hospital, they'll have a funding source in the future. But also, too, we can elevate their living level, so that maybe we can keep them out of the hospital. So I would go to the therapist and I would say, this person is coming in for 2 weeks. I want them to have more than the minimum of therapy every day. We need to get this done and to get them out. So I could actually put a dollar amount to that and say, this is what it will cost us. This is what it could potentially save us in the future. And this is what this individual could potentially contribute in the future. So you can put money to that. That's what we have to do to get people with the money to buy into what we're doing. So that's that research component, but we have to have that to be able to show that we can make that difference. I think it was years ago when they started Head Start, and they were able to show that for every dollar invested in Head Start, there was like a $3 profit down the road, where that child was able to make it through school, graduate. It was a long-term perspective, but that child made it through school. They were able to graduate, get a high school diploma, go on to college and things like that because of Head Start. So that's what we have to do. We have to be able to do that to demonstrate, again, the value that we're providing to society so others will want to invest in it. What's the return on investment? Y'all want to know what the return on your investment is when you purchase a class, when you pay your tuition. What I'm going to tell you is the return on investment is on you, though. You're investing in yourself is what you're investing in. So that's the best return on an investment you could ever invest in. But it's the same thing. So when we're talking to funders, when we're talking to board of directors, when we're talking to potential supporters, whether it be crowdsourcing, whatever it be, they want to know what the return on investment is going to be, and we have to be prepared to provide that for them. That's taking that for-profit side and bringing it into what we're doing. Other questions? Anything else? All right. Well, it was good seeing y'all's faces. And those of you who I didn't see your face, it was good seeing your name. And in D2L for every other week, I've already scheduled it. So you can always just go in there and our Zoom will be right there. So it's already scheduled. I know we're going to have a little bit of conflict with the other classes, and if we need to, we can just bump this one and start it at 6:30 or something like that. I don't think Dr. Moore ever holds her class for very long. I think she just kind of does what we're going to do, pop in and pop out. So we'll play it by ear. And if we need to meet at another time because of an assignment or anything like that, we can do that also. All right. Everybody good for now?
Yeah, I mean, as the semester progresses, I guess we'll have more questions and concerns, but right now it seems good.
Okay, and I will go in and get the, this week I'll get the D2L shell caught up and content put in there and all that kind of stuff. My idea is to have every week open so you can go to it at any point in time and look at the stuff as you're going through. So I will try really hard this week to get that up and going.
Okay,
It's
one
a work
last
in
thing.
progress.
Are you creating the groups for us for the grant, or how's the group being created for them?
I will create a section where you can go in and tell me if you want to work with somebody specifically. And if you don't want to work with somebody specifically, I'll assign you to somebody. And then you can have the groups that way for the grant. That work? Go ahead and start thinking about it now. Again,
I already have one.
Oh, good. Doing some Googling and things like that to come up with some of them. I mean, it doesn't have to be a, you know, $1 million grant or anything like that, a small grant, but it is really important to get something that's realistic and go through that process and try to submit it and really get some funding for it. Great to add to the old resume.
We may not necessarily get funding, right? Like
you may not.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you can and you submit it, then that's great. And I mean, you know, if it gets funded, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I want you to go through the process as if you were actually going to submit it for funding.
Okay.
That it? I'm going to show y'all. This is my little at-home robot. This is Vector.
Wow.
Hey, Vector. Say hello.
Oh, wow. Professor, is that who's keeping up all the noise all the time? The
I know it. I have to put him to sleep sometimes because sometimes if I'm working, he wants attention and he comes over, he gets on the computer and he starts and he throws stuff off the desk and he does all that kind of stuff. Isn't he too cute? I'm learning to program him, to code him. Yes. Cute. He's a cutie, isn't he?
Has he, Dr. Judd, has he replaced your cats? You don't have your cats anymore?
I have a, no, he has not replaced my cats. We have, on my property, I have 2 residences. My husband and I built this second one, and this is actually my art studio, and then I've created my office here because when I'm at the house, in my office at the house, I have one cat. He's the one that talks when I record. So if I'm on Zoom, he wants to talk. He talks on the phone. He talks on the recording, and he is. And the other day it was. I'll tell y'all this funny, and then I'll let y'all go. But it was an early morning meeting, so I just had it at the house over there. One thing I've actually done since I've been working remote is I get up every morning just like I normally would. I shower, I dress in dress heels, just like I was going to the office because I need that separation between home. Wow. So the dean wanted an early morning meeting, so it was like a 7:30 meeting. So I thought, well, I'll just have it at my main house. And so I'm in Zoom, and my cats decide to get into the biggest hair pulling fight that there ever was. And I said, I'm sorry, y'all gonna have to excuse me. And I had to go break them up. I mean, it was a knockdown, drag out fight. So I try to do meetings over here so I don't have them because then Nala loves to talk and he loves to get up and Zoom and he wants to talk and I can't get away from him. So I'd have him over here. But if I'm over there, he'll be a part of it. That's for sure.
I mean, it's your cat. I'm not surprised it loves to do things which other cats can't do.
Oh, my cats are just, they're like our babies. They're something else. He is, yeah, they're like our babies. They love, if I don't close the bathroom door in the mornings, they get in the shower with me.
Aww.
Literally. They love to shower. So, yeah. So anyway, I may have it over there one day, one evening, and y'all can meet Nala because he'll be right in the middle of it if we're over there. All right. Well, y'all have a great rest of the evening, rest of the week. Check in on D2L, and I'll be adding some stuff, and I'll post announcements if there's anything I need you to know, okay?
Okay, good night.
All right. Good night.
Thank
See
you.
y'all later. It's good seeing y'all. We need to get, well, I think we have a couple. Do we have any guys in here? Oh, we have Josh. I thought it'd be fun. We should have a pajama party one night, you know?
Yes.
But we might not want to have guys. Well, I guess the guys could be in here, but we should have a pajama party meeting. Again, think creatively. If we do, it'll be one I won't record. How's that?
Hey, you have 10 also.
Okay, yeah, that's right. There you are.
And I had a question also.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thinking about the social work profession as far as income, does you think gender has something to do with the pay, since about 83 to 85% of social workers are female?
I don't think it. It's been proven in research. Absolutely. Yes, because it's a female-dominated profession, and I'll tell you, as a male, you will more than likely rise to administration quicker than a female will, and you will make more money. Years ago, again, when I worked in the hospital, I had a male peer and a female peer, and they both worked there they worked in the main hospital, I worked in the rehab. Well, the female left and went to the dialysis center, which was a part of the hospital, but went to and worked at the dialysis center. And the male actually went 2 or 3 years later at a sister facility that was in a town very close there. He got hired at a higher salary than she did, doing the same job, and she already had more experience.
Wow.
And that's true, because we were all friends. We were all friends, and we knew. And he did. He got hired at and then he actually moved up and became an administrator within a year.
What's wrong?
So yeah, it's definite.
Male chauvinist.
Well, you know, and unfortunately, with COVID and with the children being at home, it is disproportionately affecting women in the workforce because more and more women are actually staying at home to be with the kids, to help them with their learning. And there's some projections that it's going to set women's salaries back several years, maybe even up to 10 years because of what's happened with COVID. And women, again, are still primary caregivers. And so it's the women who are making the decisions to support what's going on at home and the kids at home, and they're leaving the workforce. And the projection is it's going to set women back again. Unfortunately. Anything else? All right. We'll do it again. Y'all have a great rest of the week, okay? All right.
Bye.
I'll get this up in about 48 hours. I'll get it converted and put up, okay?
Okay. Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.